All right, welcome to the stream. It's been a while since I've streamed on YouTube. Totally new setup. I've been streaming a bunch on Twitch, and as many of you know, the last YouTube streams were when I was trying to do the live CNN debate coverage, and CNN shut me down, and their VP said all sorts of stuff about me. A VP of PR or communication or something said all sorts of stuff. Anyway, then we were on vacation. I'm back on YouTube, and I'm going to be doing Twitch stuff and YouTube stuff off and on. Today we are going to, people noticing that my hair does not actually look the way it looked in the thumbnail for this stream. How dare I? It's good to be back on YouTube. And we've got something a little bit different planned for you today. So I'm actually going to be doing an interview, and the interview is going to deal with something that I think is an important thing, which is, for me, my perspective. We'll talk to Eric Crown in a second, but my perspective is that I think that even if we on the left can identify problems with our economic system, that doesn't mean we shouldn't take advantage of the tools that are available to us in the personal finance world. And I think Eric agrees with that, and we're going to talk about that. So we're going to do the interview. I may then open phone lines. We will see. If we get 10 new website members, I will certainly do it. If we don't, I probably won't, because I do have other streams planned this week. And I think it's going to be a great time. So let's see. What else did I want to address before? Oh, okay. So I've drastically improved the out of the studio streaming setup. I have a better camera. My microphone setup should be better. Question one: am I synced? Like, is the audio and video synced? Because that's been an ongoing issue. If people in the chat can let me know, I would appreciate that. Let's see. Yes, people mostly saying it is synced. That's good. People want me to talk about Yang. Okay, I just had a question about the syncing, but I appreciate that nonetheless. Seems like it's mostly synced according to people. Sync is good. Okay, the other thing I've added is we will have the super chats right over here. Right there. Super chats will be on screen. So, for example, Sam Dean has already provided a $2 Australian super chat, which I much appreciate, and that's great, and new members will pop up and all of that stuff. Okay, so let's connect with Eric Crown momentarily. I'm trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to go over. We were on vacation last week, which is why I was not able to talk about the Greenland stuff as it was happening. I was not able to talk about the G7, like at the very beginning, although we've covered it quite a bit. But I'm back now. So we're back to the normal schedule. I know I missed a crazy week in Trump land, as April says. But it's good to be back, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about. All right, so let's see if we can connect here with Eric Crown, and then we will see. Let's take a look here. Hey, Eric.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. All right, let's see. I'm going to pull you up on screen here, and then I think we're going to be in very, very good shape, off and running. There's Eric. Okay. So for people who don't know Eric Crown is formerly a professional equity option market maker, now a Bitcoin trader, has a YouTube channel where he does live streams focused on market analysis and cryptocurrency. And so, is it fair to say your politics, generally speaking, are pretty left?
My politics, I'm pretty much apolitical, actually. I like to not get caught up in both the gangs, which I feel like is always, it just kind of dissuades you from the more tangible things as a trader when we're talking about specifically, this as a profession.
Gotcha. So, I mean, obviously, I'm sure you know, I do a left-wing show. My audience is primarily left-wing, obviously some right-wing people that watch either because they want to see what the opposition is doing, or because they don't like me personally, or they want to troll me, or whatever else the case may be, which is fine. But so my thing has been, I mean, my background has basically been traditional economics, albeit from a department, the University of Massachusetts, that did a lot of Marxian stuff. So that's different than a lot of economics departments. Then I got an MBA in financial planning, and my view has been I'm aware of a lot of the serious problems that exist structurally in our economy. And yet at the same time, I don't want to not take advantage of tools that I can use to potentially better society. In other words, if I can understand markets and make good investment decisions, even if I think that at some structural level we have major problems, I still think we're better off in the net if I take advantage of that, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Cryptocurrency.
mean,
Cryptocurrency has also been talked about as, it's this libertarian, anarcho-libertarian thing. No leftist should be involved with it. And for me, it's like, okay, listen, I mean, it's risky. I don't know that I'd put more than 6 to 8% of my money in there, but if it's a tool I can use for diversification, why not? That's kind of like my approach to the system that we have.
Right, right. And when it comes to Bitcoin, I I was never under the impression that it's either a left or right type of thing. Bitcoin is agnostic as far as I understand. But when it comes down to, profiting off of these sorts of things or just diversifying yourself, that is a risk-averse strategy, of course, which, is going to speak to anyone who wants to, of course, protect their finances, I'd imagine.
So help me understand a little bit about your background, and then I want to get into some of the things that are going on economically. You worked in sort of just like mainstream financial world. So like explain what you even did for people who don't even understand the field that you were in.
Right. Yeah. I suppose I should tell my story. My name's Eric Crown. I started trading long time ago. My father was a trader, so I used to go down to the floor of the Pacific Stock Exchange with him, ever since I was like 11 or 12, be a clerk for him each and every summer. It's where I kind of like fell in love with the business. Really, really fast paced, kind of like an adult playground down on the floor there. And after that, went to college, did the whole 6 years there, studied economics, business, all that good stuff. Ended up leaving and then harassing one of my family friends who I met through my father down on the floor, who is now trading options on the floor of New York Stock Exchange, ARCA. He kind of took me under his wing, taught me how to trade options, taught me how to analyze markets, and from there, spent a lot of time with him, learning his system. Really, really great experience. Amazing person. Really, really thankful for that. And then got passed on to my next mentor, essentially another guy who I harassed, essentially. And this man had about 40 years of experience. And he taught me kind of his way of doing things. He was more involved with what's called technical analysis, which very few people were actually doing down there at the time. A little bit more of a newer thing, and that's what really started to really open my eyes up to the opportunities. So, as far as what an options market maker does, is quite literally they are, if you're familiar with trading options to begin with, they're quite literally quoting both the calls and the puts, making the markets for that based upon our own theoretical model of the market, right? So we're essentially running some variation of usually like a Black-Scholes method, and that's going to populate theoretical values for these options, and then we'll say, well, hey, if my model is telling me that this option is worth $1, I'm willing to be a buyer of this option for 50 cents, and I'll sell it for $1.50, for example, right? So that was the whole basis of that. And of course, when you're trading options, you have to also trade spot as well, just regular straight up stock underline. And so that gives you a whole all-encompassing view of what's going on in the behind scenes. So usually when we're talking about market makers on the floor of an exchange, we're usually the ones doing the big deals with the bankers or independent financial institutions that have extreme size and facilitate those transactions essentially.
So how long did you work in that space?
About 5 years, 5 to 10 years, depending upon where you kind of count it up from. But actual trading my own account, about 5 years.
And why did you leave?
I got sucked into cryptocurrency. It
is
kind of
that right?
seduces you away. Yeah. So in traditional markets, there's a lot of government oversight, which more or less is there's some good things about it, some bad things about it, but it puts a lot of pressure on on the individual traders as in order to be truly independent, you really have to deal with all of the all the FINRA, all the SEC, all the regulations, which can take a lot of time. One of the big reasons why I wanted to come over to cryptocurrency land is just because you don't necessarily have to deal with that anymore. There's obviously other issues with it, but I do like the freedom.
So listen, I mean, I've made it no secret to my audience that I believe that much of the activity, not all, but much of the activity that's taking place on Wall Street, colloquially speaking, is activity that is not economically stimulative in the sense that a business that is making a product which then is purchased by people, a physical product is purchased by people and used and is employing people in a direct sense. I don't believe that it's economically stimulative in that way. I think that there is a lot of money being made with money, which is not in and of itself bad. I mean, listen, I want to make money off interest. I want to be able to save money and do all of those things in dividends and distributions. What is your sense of that that perception from much of the political left, that there is non-economically stimulative sort of vulture activity. Is that accurate to some degree, to no degree, to a big degree?
Oh, I hear this argument all the time. It's like you're an evil trader, you're not creating anything, and you're just, moving numbers around and then taking it out. Well,
we don't have, I mean, that's sort of going a step further. I'm not ascribing evil to the individuals that are involved any more than I do to a corporation. But this idea that, for example, a lot of the derivative stuff that goes on, that it's not helping the economy in the same way that, for example, running a farm might help the economy in the local community, or whatever example you want to use.
Okay, yeah, absolutely, man. So this, at face value, that sounds like a very sound, logical argument. I used to think the same thing until I really got into the business. The thing is that nothing in this world operates in a vacuum, right? So if say just at the most basic of basic examples, you are that trader who's not necessarily creating value, but making value. I suppose you could say, well, what do you do with that value afterwards? Well, you're going to go spend it, right? So once you start spending it, it starts getting put back into the economy. You vote with your dollars, of course. So you're, rewarding other things that you do like. And that's kind of the way that you can give back in a more literal sense. Of course, in other ways, like I said, things don't operate in a vacuum. So there's always going to be some sort of downstream effects, not just like the money comes into you and then just, it stays with you forever. No, of course not. Money is kind of worthless in and of itself. I mean, just as it is. It only kind of represents what you can do with it. And so that potential is only realized, once you start to spread it around, and that kind of stimulates the whole, bringing it into the whole sphere.
Sure. I mean, but I guess maybe that's too general of a defense and what I mean by that is you're sort of getting at the idea that there's a multiplier effect to money in the economy, and that money that is created or earned or whatever initially, to some degree, it is put back into the economy, and that has a multiplier effect. And then where I would go along those lines would be, okay, different money has a different multiplier effect depending on who earns it. For example, if someone makes $20,000 a year and you give them $100, it's much more likely that $100 is actually going to be spent than if someone makes $200,000 a year and you give them the same amount of money. That person's more likely to save it rather than need that $100. But I'm saying something.
Let me just stop you right there, though.
Yeah, okay.
If you are that person, making the higher dollar amount, of course, well, what's going to happen then? In a more literal sense, just a more obvious sense, you're going to be taxed more, of course. And then where does money go then? Well, it goes to the government. They spread it around. Nothing operates in a vacuum.
Sure, although that money may well be taxed at the capital gains rate, which could actually end up being lower. But okay, we're getting kind of into the minutia. But I wanted to. We don't. Yeah. And I think the audience can sort of see where the direction that could go. The next level I kind of want to get to is, once we have our understanding of the role of the financial world and bankers and Wall Street and all of these tools that are available, yes, disproportionately to the wealthier. We know that the lion's share of stocks and bonds are held by the wealthier, even when you account for 401ks and retirement accounts. My view is, we are doing a disservice to ourselves and to whatever political movement we support, doesn't matter what it is, if we don't understand and utilize these tools to the extent that they are available to us. So this is where sometimes the left and I will disagree, where I will say, I get it. The stock market is actually hugely redistributive, up rather than down. The right often complains about downward redistribution through taxing the rich. The stock market redistributes up in a way because the lion's share of the dividends and the growth goes to people who own stocks who are disproportionately the wealthy. Like, I have all those critiques, but to whatever extent I can use these tools myself to then be better equipped to do my activism, I think it's not even a responsibility, it's a duty to actually understand and do that. I know that you say you were apolitical on a personal level, but does that sort of understanding of markets and finance as a tool resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the biggest disservices that our current school system does is they don't teach us about money. I mean, financial education is, you don't get it in school. So how can you expect to be able to deal with the myriad of financial issues that come into the world, coming out of there without any sort of legitimate training in it? So yeah, man, I'd say 100%. It's these tools are there for you to understand, and for the people who actually go through the trouble to understand them, they can become extremely powerful. And going back to our former kind of conversation on the topic, how do how do you kind of give back? Well, you do good things with your money. That's how you do it.
Yeah, so there's people in the chat, for example, who are saying, hey guys, listen, like the Amazon is burning. What the hell are you talking about? Derivatives or whatever the case may be. This is where I sometimes split with the left, that I think that there's a slice of the left that doesn't understand the connection. And what's going on in the Amazon already relates to money. And if there were more people with certain political views that were participating in this system, we might be better able to use the system in order to achieve the things that we want. I feel like, do you get the sense that that connection maybe is missing for some portion of people who are just consuming what it is that's going on?
100%. I mean, it's this weird fallacy in our society that money has been kind of associated with just badness or evil, or if you have money, in some way you're kind of destined as like a bad person in a sense. Well, if the people who want to make these positive changes just made more money, well, they could make those things happen. And it always comes back to that fact, right? That's kind of the way that we have our society set up, for better or worse. Again, kind of an agnostic thing, but that is the reality as it is right now. So if you really truly want to do something for the rainforest, the best thing to do is put yourself into a position of power where you can actually do something like that. And of course, handling your finances would be a direct way towards doing that.
Let's talk a little bit about what's going on now. The term recession is being thrown around more and more. Everybody claims to have their indicator that is going to tell them whether we are or aren't in a recession. A few things that I've talked about on my program include, this is relatively obscure actually, but looking at the number of people who are more than 90 days behind on car payments. This is an indicator that I actually think is an interesting one, because vehicle transportation in a lot of the country relates very directly to the state of one's personal finances. So that's an indicator that has been looking less and less good. You hear about the inverted yield curve, and we don't necessarily have to go into that, but that's something that we've talked about. Question one is, how do you, as someone who is working directly in this space and still is, but in a different, more independent capacity now, how do you evaluate whether we are in a recession? But maybe just as importantly, are there decisions that an individual would make on that basis if they determine, yes, we're in a recession, or no, we are not in a recession?
That's a great question. Okay, so as far as discussing whether in a recession or not, there's all sorts of different indicators that you can look at to kind of judge, is this quite literally recession? I would say a downtrend on a monthly scale, on a yearly scale, that's when we start to enter recession territory. As far as that other question, and that's a beautiful question, because this is such a talking piece right now, but it always comes back to it. How are you going to change your personal behaviors if this quite literally is a recession, if this is the doomsday that a lot of people are kind of bringing it up to be, which I would argue, we probably do go lower here, but I'm not necessarily convinced that we actually are in recession territory just yet. We can perhaps get into that in a bit.
Yep.
But realistically, what's gonna happen is we're gonna see interest rates go into likely negative territories. So people, might change their borrowing habits or their saving habits. But as far as anything other than that, the average person, realistically, probably it's more like a conversational piece rather than like, hey, I'm going to be doing this on top of it. That's really what it comes back to, in my experience.
Yeah, I mean, so, okay, if you lose your job because of the economic situation, that's a very acute event that takes place, and then depending on your financial situation, most people need to find another job. That's like a very specific way in which a quote recession could impact someone. If you're close to retirement, there may be decisions about, do you want to hold off on retirement for a few years to not start drawing down a retirement account, for example, during a time that it is losing value. But for a lot of people who are not about to retire, it seems as though the behavior may not really change that much once you cross the border into saying we are now in a recession.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's what it comes down to. You have to only follow what people do, right? You can't go off of what people say. And what really actually changes on that? Well, for the average person, very little. I mean, the job market gets worse, of course, and wages likely go down and all that good stuff. Well, not necessarily good stuff, but As far as like the personal individual decisions, I do have a little bit of a difficult time giving like a full on blanket statement to it. But I would say in general, yeah, I'd certainly agree with that.
Let me put it a different way. What are the types of things that the average person would be thinking about in terms of personal finance if the economy is decidedly in a recession?
What would the individual person think about inside of a recession?
Yeah,
Is that
in
what you're
other
asking?
words, what are the reasonable things from an economic and investing perspective?
Right.
I mean, should people be rethinking allocation? Should people be
Okay.
rethinking,
Okay.
do I want to just throw money in savings accounts
Yep.
rather than continuing whatever else I'm doing? I don't know.
Gotcha. Okay, so in a recession, we're going to see the the bond yields invert, right? Which means that it costs more to borrow sooner rather than later. So people are going to go on to a more longitudinal kind of time frame, essentially, and that would likely change those sorts of decisions. It's going to cost more to borrow money, essentially. So credit card fees and whatnot, they're going to go up. All those sorts of things do have downwards effects, absolutely. But as far as the day to day, those considerations likely just show up as people just saying, hey, I want to spend less money, essentially is what they're gonna is what it's likely going to come down to.
Yeah, and
It's like
that's where often you get the vicious cycle of recession, even merely recession fears can actually precipitate a downward cycle because
right,
as
right.
people become more conservative in their spending because they anticipate a recession, that hurts the businesses they would be patronizing with their
Hmm.
money, which actually can sort of cause that recession in and of itself. I think that that's a dynamic that is often just not even discussed when corporate media says, "Are we in a recession? Are we not?" The
Yeah,
effect
yeah.
that the fear of the recession can actually have on the economy is often understated in my view.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is that they sound the alarm bells so often on, these media venues like CNBC and whatnot because it gets people going, right? What's a good headline? Are we going into recession? Is the world about to, fall off the face of a cliff? Is it actually happening in reality? Well, I could show you plenty of charts that right now it's we've just been ranging for the past couple of years. I mean, really nothing's changed all that much as far as like actual where the actual data is. But people are being primed with this idea that that the traditional markets, I was about to say Bitcoin, but the traditional markets are going to go flatline essentially, and you should be panicking right now. Well, of course, as you said, and again, it always comes back to this fact: nothing operates in a vacuum. People are going to be making decisions based upon that, and it kind of precipitates these sorts of things, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. So with that said, I actually kind of have a theory now that because people are making these decisions a little bit prematurely because they're being, emotionally, essentially like emotionally kind of dragged across the field with it, it almost allows the game to go on a little bit longer. So right now, where we're kind of at in the general markets is we're kind of like at we're getting pretty damn close to the top of the top, I'd imagine. Yes, the recession is likely coming. Yes, there is likely going to be some massive downside, but you've been listening to the news. They've been telling you that for the last like 2-3 years. They've been shoving it in your face every damn time. The thing is that the Fed, and because we have Trump in office right now, there's a lot of extra games that can be played. It's no secret that Trump's whole calling card is the stock market. Again, this is not a
Yes.
political statement from my own sense, but Trump he runs off the stock market. I was there when he got elected. The thing just went up and it didn't stop going up. I'll put it that way. And it's been more or less pretty damn good ever since then. Just for like the average sector. So with that said, we know we can kind of deduce that Trump is likely going to do everything in his power to keep the stock market rising. How does he do that?
Yes.
Well, he bullies the Fed.
Right. Well, I was going to say that there's
Right.
been this pattern of a good stock market month is thanks to Trump. A bad stock market month is because the Fed isn't doing what Trump wants.
Right.
Take credit for the wins and blame somebody else for the losses, essentially.
Right, and yeah, it's great, isn't it? Scary though that's our
Well, I
actual
mean, if you can
situation.
get people to believe it, it's an extremely great place to be as the president of the United States.
Right, it's a no lose situation. It's kind of like the banks socializing the losses, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, So the way that Trump will do it is, he either bullies the Fed into doing what he wants, which is just lower interest rates. We see a few countries like mainstream first world countries going into negative rates. I think Japan's there. I think Germany is just went there, I believe, and the United States is almost pretty much destined to follow. So we're gonna go to negative rates. So the Fed has more bullets in their chamber, but if they were to fight Trump, and this is what he kind of revealed on his, on his hand, I think in the last few weeks, is that if he doesn't get his way, what does he do? He does tariffs. So he gets it either which way. So we can probably deduce that he's going to be doing something like this in order to just prop up the stock market, at least until the election, I'd imagine. And then after that, the Fed can keep on printing some free money, which of course that creates a whole lot of other problems. But I'm sure that you're probably familiar with this, being an economics person yourself. That there's this great theory going out right now, this great macroeconomic theory called modern economic theory, and it essentially says something like this: we can print as much money as possible.
Oh, you mean modern monetary theory?
Modern monetary theory, yes.
Yeah.
We can print as much money as possible, and it's no problem, except for something called inflation. Just except for something called inflation, right? That is a legitimate problem, of course, So
yeah, well, but I think it's right. Maybe more. I mean, okay, so that's a very umbrella overview of MMT. I encourage people in the audience to check out my interview with Stephanie Kelton about MMT, where we go into quite a bit of detail, and Pavlina Cherneva also, who's really good on this issue. I mean, I think a more nuanced understanding of it would be merely printing money, if it's for economically stimulative purposes, is not going to trigger the inflation spiral that like a supply side debt hawk claims that it will. I don't think I've ever heard any MMT person say it literally does not matter how much money the Fed prints and what it's used for. I think that the more maybe more precise would be if we think about, okay, if everybody had health care, fewer people would be sick, meaning more people would work and crime would go down. That would be an okay reason to print money, and it wouldn't cause, an endless inflationary death spiral. On the other hand, if we just print money to give it to the 0.1% who are mostly going to save it, that may not be such a good reason. I mean, I think that's my understanding of how MMT scholars actually say it.
You can certainly say that, and that would be a more nuanced understanding. Absolutely. The point that I'm making, though, and it always comes back to that fact, man, nothing operates in a vacuum.
Sure.
If we start doing that, it's a slippery slope. It goes into some very bizarre places. I would be very hard pressed to say that just printing money for the purpose of printing money, even in those sorts of situations,
I think that's the point. It's somewhere that we don't want to go. It's not for the purpose of merely printing the money. It's, hey, here are the economic losses from, for example, not people going bankrupt from not having health care, missing work from not having health care. You can kind of find the economic value of all those losses.
But
and then you could say, no, but hold on, let me just finish the way I see it. You could calculate that. Imagine that is $1 trillion. That doesn't matter what the number is. You could then say, all right, if the Fed can get everybody health care by printing half of that amount, even accounting for the inflationary effect, we're still better off in the net. I think that's the calculation that could be made.
Okay. That I can understand. Yes. But in a base sense, if let's say there's $100,000 in existence right now,
mm-hmm.
and you have 10 of those. And then I say, David, we're going to do this MMT. I'm going to start printing 50,000. I'm going to start printing 50,000 every day because we need more healthcare. What happens to your dollar? Even though that's a good thing, net it will be good. It will be beneficial. But what happens to you personally, your dollar?
Yeah, I think that's just the wrong question in the sense that it's a sort of myopic way. We don't think about. So okay, let me back up. Imagine that we do Medicare for all, right? There's a ton of people that are going to lose their jobs as a result. In other words, you eliminate the need for a lot of medical, insurance fraud investigators. You eliminate the need for a lot of medical coders that work for the insurance company and medical coders that work for the hospital. Like, jobs will be lost, but there is no decision that can be made in a country of 340 million people that will not have some costs. The question is at the
Right.
broader level,
Hold on,
what's
hold
the
on.
effect?
I think you're missing my point.
Okay.
It's quite literally just the fact that it devalues your dollar. Your purchasing power has gone down just by that metric. Anytime that they print more money, that's always going to be a fact, correct?
Well, I mean, so again, going back to what
Well,
you've been saying, which
hold
is
on,
nothing
David.
happens in a
David,
vacuum.
if
Yeah.
there's more money in circulation and you have the same amount, your purchasing power will go down. It's
In a
not worth as much.
literal, if you consider no other factors and do the thought experiment merely in a vacuum, you are correct. But I would quote you from 5 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago, which is none of this stuff is happening in a vacuum.
True.
But in any
Yes.
case,
So
we
there's
may
gonna
be
be
getting
some
off
social
track with
benefit,
this, but
yes.
it's a good conversation.
Anyways, I mean, yes, we could certainly talk about something like that, but that's certainly not my forte when we're getting into
Sure.
like actual market analysis.
Right. So let's go back to that a little bit because so the next thing I kind of wanted to get into was when it comes to I'll give an example. When in 2012 Mitt Romney was running against Barack Obama's reelection at the time, both were making promises about what they would do as stewards of the economy. My view at the time was we're probably in for 4 pretty good years no matter which of these two guys wins. In other words, all the indicators at the time were things are quite stable, unemployment is decreasing, companies are making money, etc. There may be an inflection point,
Well,
whether it's
we
Romney
were at
or
a
Obama.
we were at a very unique point in the market at that point. We were literally coming out of the out of the 2008 area, right?
Right. Yes.
So it's it's easy to go up when you're coming from a very massive economic catastrophe, essentially.
No question about it. So, in the end, Barack Obama got reelected and the economy did well. If Mitt Romney had gotten elected, quite frankly, the economy probably would have done similarly well, although there would have been some decisions made that could have altered that, maybe things related to tax cuts. Okay. When you look now at 2020, is your view that the 4 years that follow will be sort of insulated from who wins in 2020, or do you actually think that Trump re-election versus somebody else will create a serious inflection point for the 4 years that follow?
So that's a really good question. The thing is that it doesn't just operate on a year-to-year basis, right? What's being done now has implications going onwards and forwards, and because we're at such a critical point in just the overall sphere, just the overall health of the economy, we really don't have too many more bullets to kind of force into the economy right now. So no matter who goes on for the next 4 years, whether it's Trump, whether it's insert Democrat name here, I'd imagine that it's going to be a little bit of the more of the same, and then probably really realistically. I do think that it's kind of like a ticking time bomb on this, on this market. Within the next 3 to 5 years, I would imagine we probably actually do play out that actual downside and legitimately do, you legitimately do have a real recession, no matter who's in charge. There's just very little place for the Fed to work around this right now. I mean, they can, like I said, that they can lower interest rates a little bit more. They can print more money. That's all well and good up until a point, right, where there becomes diminishing returns, and they start actually doing a lot more harm than good, and that's when real problems will actually happen. So, whoever kind of inherits that economy, they're going to get blamed for it. Of course, whether it's Trump, whether it's Democrat, doesn't matter who it is, they're going to be dealt a pretty bad hand, essentially.
I mean, I think that I basically am in agreement with you. I think that a lot. So every day we're a day closer to the next recession. Doesn't mean I know when it is, and we're notably terrible at actually saying when it's going to be. There were people in 2014 saying it'll definitely be in 2016, and I mean, whatever. We know that we're sort of bad. What we do know is every day we're a day closer. For me, at this point, the big thing with Trump, and this is getting political, is that I think that a lot of the impact on the market is going to be, number one, related to the trade war, and that's less psychological, but it's more just real. And then number two, it's going to be confidence, quite frankly, because when Donald Trump does the cartoonish stuff that I think everybody agrees he does, there are people who defend it and people who don't defend it. When he does the cartoonish stuff, I think it's scaring people around the world and it is rattling markets. And I think that is more, I'm basically agreeing with you that on policy, there is a sort of more or less predetermined path in a lot of ways that is set by factors outside of the White House. I think there's a lot of psychological stuff that will be impacted by whether he's reelected or not.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of psychology, of course. But just in the general day-to-day right now, this is a very unique market that we have because one tweet can really, really rock things.
Yes.
I have never experienced anything like this before. This is one of the reasons why I actually left traditional market, just because my edge is with technical analysis, not with analyzing political spheres. And this is a highly political market right now. It's in fact I can't recall a time before this that it was ever like this. Doing studies all the way back to the 1950s, essentially. This is completely unique, and one of those things where Trump knows what he's doing. He knows how to play the game when it comes to the stock market. Love him or hate him, he does have kind of a method to his madness with the way that he runs things up. So yes, I would agree with what you're saying in there. And even take it a step further and saying that, regardless of whether Trump is elected or not, the damage that we're doing right now there's really no way to kind of undo it without playing out a little bit of a recession.
Yes.
This is going to happen.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about Bitcoin, and then I want to ask you a couple of other specific sort of personal finance questions. And then for people who are watching, I have no clue how many people have been signing up, but if we do get 10 new members on the website, when we're done talking with Eric, I will open up the phone lines if people are interested in that. And if they're not, that's okay too. Okay, so Bitcoin. I got into Bitcoin not like early, but certainly years ago. And okay, so I wrote it up and then it's kind of back down and I sold bits and pieces of it and I still hold some, whatever. Okay. Do I think that Bitcoin is the future? I don't know. Do I think that some crypto is likely to achieve big enough adoption that it will become kind of like the transactional currency that some dream of? I think that that's possible. But for me, the biggest barriers right now are, one, price volatility. Number two, adoption, and number three, the sort of infrastructure that leads to off and on transaction delay issues. Question one, do you think that those three are the biggest issues, or are there others, or are those not issues? And question two, sort of like, how are you big picturing crypto right now?
Right. Okay. So, as far as just to answer the question straight up, could it be another cryptocurrency? Yeah, I mean, you always want to keep an open mind with that. But I'd say one of the biggest things for Bitcoin right now that it has going for it is it's been 10 years without any real problems. It's been working. So when we're talking about programming a cryptocurrency that's going to be holding hundreds of billions of trillions of dollars, you have to make sure that it's secure. You have to make sure that the protocol works. It needs to be good, right?
Yes.
So it's the only one that has that big of a history to go on along with it. As far as the question about the infrastructure being built, we're seeing that happen right now. CMEs, which is the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, which is a major U.S. exchange, offers Bitcoin futures as of December 2017. And we actually are working on getting what's called backed now, coming up in next month. I'm looking at the date right now. It's literally about 1 month away from now, and that's also going to be on major U.S. markets. ETFs are being talked about and postulated. They've been thrown into the for the SEC to deal with over the past year, plenty of them. So it's just kind of a matter of time. We see the infrastructure being built up, which tells me that the financial industry is gearing up for something like this. They're not wasting their time, going through all the rigmarole. Which, believe me, there is a ton of rigmarole with getting any of these assets approved for just trading in general. And that tells me that there is serious belief in this. Not only that, but we see a lot of major banks and whatnot starting to have cryptocurrency desks. I mean, you even hear about J.P. Morgan having their own internal cryptocurrency. A little bit of a different thing, of course, but this whole sphere is actually pretty ripe with the financial industry, just because there are so many quant firms in this right now, and they're growing day by day. There is significant interest right now, and it's growing, is what we've seen over the past year or so. I mean, really, each and every year it grows, of course, but really been picking up exponentially in the last couple of years.
So, I mean, okay, I guess Bitcoin kind of works. I guess at the point 18 months ago, when the price was fluctuating wildly at the same time that transactions were taking 24 hours and costing $20. It's like, yes,
well,
it technically worked, but like, is that really as designed?
Well, hold on. I'd have to correct you on that. I'm not sure that that's true, that it takes 24 hours to do a transaction. It takes about 10 minutes. which is still kind of long, if you compare
Okay,
it
but
with,
there could.
with
So
someone
let
else.
me correct. So it takes 10 minutes to if I'm using the right terminology, process the block. But there was a point at which it was taking 24 hours to get to the block you might have been waiting for. Is that more accurate?
Yeah, so about 2 years ago, during 2017, Bitcoin went parabolic from about what was it, like $1,000 to
Parabolic. I
$20,000.
like that.
Right, and during that time, the infrastructure for Bitcoin was quite young, and so yes, when a lot of people at once were like trying to send things through, and for
Yes.
that, everything would kind of build up in the in the miners pool essentially. I'm not using the right terminology with this, but just to in layman's term, I suppose. So they would have a lot of things to process, right? So yes, it would take a long time at that time, but that improves over time. There's been significant improvements with the Bitcoin protocol. We have SegWit now. And there's more things along the way which help speed those transactions up.
Got it. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. So, okay, good. So, from a sort of forward-looking perspective, my view is the Bitcoin I have, the Ethereum I have, the Litecoin, etc. I consider it extremely speculative. I consider it sort of, so like my main thing is I invest in the lowest fee mutual funds possible.
Okay.
Betterment and Vanguard, you're talking about 5 to 10 basis points. Then I pick some individual stocks, but relatively few, because I just don't think I'm that good at it unless I really devote a lot of time to it. So like I've been in Tesla for a really long time, as people in my audience know, and sometimes berate
Fair
me
enough.
for whatever. Okay. And then it's like I've got money just in like a high yield savings account, and then I've got some crypto, but I consider it could disappear overnight. Is that the approach I should have with that money, or are we moving away from it being that precarious?
So we need to really separate Bitcoin from what we colloquially refer to as shitcoins.
Okay.
And the majority of anything not named Bitcoin is mostly worthless, mostly garbage, has zero real purpose, has zero intentions to ever complete what they set out to do. There's probably going to be some extremely successful altcoins. Absolutely, no doubt about it. It'd be naive to say not. It also could be not. It'd also be naive to say that perhaps something else overtakes Bitcoin. We don't know yet. It's
Sure.
still extremely young, of course. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin seems to be it does seem to be a little bit of a winner take all scenario with the whole store of value argument, which I believe is what Bitcoin's going for first and foremost.
So in other words, so you're saying that if people need to understand what it is that Bitcoin even purports to be, if it's something that they're going to be involved in.
Right, exactly. A lot of people, when people talk about cryptocurrencies or anything like that, they don't talk about, hey man, I bought XYZ chain coin because I'm going to use this for my next project. No,
Right.
they're talking about it because they're saying, hey, I think this one's going to go up and I'm going to sell it higher. That game's going to go on for a while because that's the sexy part about Bitcoin right now. The gains or the potential gains, also potential losses, are astronomically high. And so when you're going back and making that relation with traditional markets, yes, it makes sense to just do a little bit in something speculative like cryptocurrency, which I do think gains more and more traction over time. But even then, with even just putting in a little bit, it helps diversify you. And then of course, the gains on Bitcoin, they come in they come in X's, whereas in traditional markets they come in like a few percentage points, right?
Sure.
So that's the whole magic of Bitcoin right now, and what I think is mostly alluring to people as people look at this as going to 50,000, 100,000, these crazy moon boy numbers, which may be possible. I mean, I think you could actually come up with some pretty damn good arguments for it. I'm not sure about the John McAfee $1 million prediction. I don't know about that one. But I do think that there is upside potential. And so for the average investor, it would make sense to just put some into Bitcoin just because it's a hedge. It can be viewed in some ways as a hedge against your stock portfolio. I could also go into that and really destroy that argument too. I'm not necessarily convinced that it's so much of a hedge. Just like I don't think gold is a hedge or silver is a hedge or any of that.
Right. Well, that's so I mean, that gets us
Right.
to just zoom out a little bit, which is okay for the average person, right? I mean, you hear about there's so much money going into pumping gold, and also collectible coin scams, which I'm glad to talk about, but I don't think we even really need to. But gold bullion as a store of value. as a hedge against markets. There are people who talk about, the high yield savings account when it's available at 2.5%, which is the federal funds rate now drops. Most of those 2.5 accounts are dropping to 2. I just got an email today from one of my banks about that. That's where you want to be, or Bitcoin or whatever.
Right.
For the average person, I mean, what should their, I've been reading about no more than 10% in precious metals, no more than 6 to 8% in cryptocurrency, and even that may be too much for some people. Do these numbers sound about right to you? Do they sound crazy?
The thing is that if we're being completely, if I'm just going to straight shoot you right now, there's no hedge against a real market downturn.
A full
real market
downturn,
crash,
right.
There's no hedge.
Yeah.
What happened during 2008 for gold? Went down 35%, just like all the other sacks of shit. They
Right.
all went down. There is no real hedge. That's why I really, 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 really caution against all of these doom and gloomers who are almost cheering on a recession. You have to understand, this is going to cause a lot of pain, economically speaking. People are going to be really, really hurt. As far
There's
as a real
also
hedge,
people, by the
there is
way,
none.
there's people in my demographic, right, millennials, who basically came out of college at the end of the recession and
Right.
have worked for the last, more than 10 years in basically a good economy. And I
straight up market, one of the best.
I think, hey, you know what? I've done the tests for risk tolerance. If I lose 30% from 40% from what I've built up over the last 10 years, I'm going to stay the road and just keep doing my thing. I don't even know that I believe that. I feel like I'm kind of BSing myself with that because I'm part of a demographic that has only seen, 8-10% downturn and then things recover and the dividends are steady throughout. I think a lot of people are going to be crushed psychologically by it.
Crushed psychologically and also financially. I mean,
And
like I
financially.
said, it's if you are the kind of person who's cheering on this sort of thing on, you have to really understand what this means. This means like pain. This means real pain. We have not experienced pain in a long time. The last real, I mean, of course, 2008 was pretty bad, but that was relatively fast. It's about a year and a half of straight down, then popped back up, V-bottom back within the next year, and then shot up to heaven, essentially. The last time that we really had a legitimate crash, sustained crash, I suppose was like 87 or 88. Which I was not trading during that time, of course.
Is that right?
Can you tell? But yeah, man. So people quickly forget, right? The market's been more or less extremely rewarding, and during 2008, a lot of people didn't even feel all that much pain. I've shuddered from saying that because I know that I'm going to really piss some people off. Yes, I totally understand that a lot of people did, but it was almost bifurcated in the way that it was kind of set off. There's certainly bubbles where this did not really affect all that much. Going back to our former conversation of how rewarding some people with money doesn't really change all that much for the general economy. But this next one would likely be. I mean, the thing is that this next one's going to be likely worse than anything that we've seen, in the last 20, 30 years. I don't even really know what to mark it off of, but I would say that we're talking about a point where the markets can get so bad that it's no fun to be the one rich person where you walk outside and then everyone's begging you for money or something like that. That's
it might be worse to be the person begging for money though.
You could say that, yes, but
yeah.
Here, I mean, one of the sayings that I believe a lot in is a rising tide lifts all ships. So going back to that, people who are cheering something like this on, I think are massively misguided if they think that it's if in some way the market downturning benefits your gold position or your beautiful hedge. There isn't really any real hedge. It's almost like a fallacy that we tell ourselves. In fact, funnily enough, what the best hedge that I've actually found with data, the best hedge. And this is gonna sound weird, but the best hedge thus far is actually soybeans. Legitimate commodities. Buying more gold, buying more silver. At the end of the day, man, if things really do crash down, especially anything like 2008, which I think it would be worse. We're gonna see that go down just the same thing. And realistically, the best hedge against it is likely going to be real commodities, like real actual consumable things that people need, that people want, that people use.
Now explain this
That's
to
probably the
me,
best way.
because my knowledge of commodities is extremely limited, but
Mhm.
over time, doesn't technology over time reduce the market value of commodities in that they become easier to produce? I mean, maybe what you're,
Yeah,
I don't
and
know if that's true, but maybe you mean that in the short
I
term
well,
during a
hold on.
particular recession that doesn't happen.
Well, to go back onto that, technology making commodities easier to essentially make, I suppose. Yes, but even taking it one step further, I mean, let's just look a little bit into the future. Where are we going? I mean, just in the not so distant future, we could talk about 3D printing, right? So now your cost of production for something like, even like gold, I mean, they're going to be able to make that at some point in time. Or maybe we go off to a different, maybe we start exploring different planets and we find a planet made of gold. I'm of course, I
That's
don't
far
know
off,
about
but
that,
okay.
but we're in a universe of infinite possibilities, of course. So
Yeah.
that would show a little bit less foresight, if you're looking into the future. Those sorts of things, yes, they likely do lose their value, but at the same point in time, what's like the most valuable resource right now? I mean, is water essentially, and what does it cost? It's pretty much free in a sense. I mean, that's kind of the way that we think about it.
Well,
But
thanks to a lot of big beverage companies, it's no longer. I mean, they're taking free water and then selling it, which is a crazy. I mean, it's insane
it's selling
actually
you
what's
plastic
going on.
bottles is what they're doing.
They're really selling the bottle. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Listen, the last thing I wanted to touch on along these lines is from your time as a trader. What
Hmm.
did you learn about psychology, where it comes to market psychology, investing psychology, that would be interesting and maybe applicable to everyday life?
All of it.
Mm.
So, what I can say about this is actually something that I'm quite passionate about. So, psychology, with regards to being a trader, to be a successful trader is to have to learn a lot about yourself. And what it really comes down to is, psychologically speaking, you're going to have to kind of face your own demons in a sense, because we are, as humans, are emotional beings. Of course, we're run by emotions, we're governed by emotions. The problem is, when you want to be a trader, you need to be accessing the logical side of your brain, which is, of course, divorced from your emotional side. And actually, in fact, when you're in those emotional states, you are quite literally blocked off from accessing your logical states. So in order to become a trader, psychologically speaking, you need to figure out a way in order to facilitate getting back into that logical state. How does that look for most people? Well, I can only speak for myself, I suppose. And what I found for myself is, taking essentially the holistic approach. Going and working out, eating a balanced diet. For myself, that means mostly meat. Going to sauna for myself, I found helps a lot. Meditation, reading books, those sorts of things have really helped me understand my own thought processes and kind of calm down in the moment. Because when price action's screaming against you, and you're watching yourself, potentially take a massive paper loss, or perhaps in a good scenario, you're watching yourself have a massive paper gain, but you're blocked off from making those logical decisions. Perhaps, a lot of the time you're going to make the wrong decision in the moment. Of course, a lot of the time, what people don't realize is the positive states are just as bad just as destructive as the negative states. A lot of people will see themselves make a ton of money like they did in 2017, especially with cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin. Things were just going to the damn moon. Bitcoin up to 20,000. But what happens? People get caught in that emotional state. They get too exuberant. They get too irrational, and they forget to sell. But of course, if you come back to it, a week later, a year later, whatever time that it takes, and look at it just as the facts as it is, you're like, man, this has gone up about 10x. I think it's time to take a little bit of profits and stop being so greedy. So those sorts of things with understanding your own psychology are so damn important, but really fighting your own inner demons with usually fear. It usually comes in some way down to fear with managing your positions. Usually most people find this going against them, not the positive aspect, although I'm sure that there's a lot of people from 2017, still remembering that as well. And then of course, more recently, 2018, the bear market in cryptocurrencies as well. a little bit more proximal, I suppose. You go through those emotional states, and the conditioning of those emotions can at first destroy you, right? A lot of the times we have to go through these sorts of situations so that we can feel those emotions and then get the emotional leverage to make a change. But it's not before you actually feel those very, very bad emotions before you can actually open yourself up and make that change as a person. So as a trader, you kind of learn how to grow again and again and again as the market throws new and dynamic things against you, as you have to reinterpret these situations. And then usually, once you kind of create your own little toolbox with how to, with how to learn from it, you feel those emotions, you can identify it, you say, hey, this is once again that fear emotion, that FOMO emotion, that whatever emotion. It's time to step back, and that's the key, step back. And then analyze, go and look in and do a little bit more of a self-reflection on it. I think journaling helps a ton. With kind of just seeing your own thought processes. So to really just be that watcher and kind of look at things from a distance is really what trading has taught me, and I've found for a lot of other people as well. Trading really helps keep things in perspective, and that obviously flows on it over into any part of your life. I mean, these sorts of emotional states you'll encounter in just about anything. I'm sure with your YouTube channel, like what happens when you first started. What happens when someone sends you a bunch of bad comments? They say, David, I hate you. Your hair is stupid, and
right.
And I hope to
A
never.
lot of people say my hair is stupid. Interestingly, you must
Hey,
have seen
too.
some of those
It's
comments.
crazy. Look like a damn. Look like I came out of a damn cave. It's one of those things though. But at first, it probably really rocked you emotionally, or at least I'd imagine. You're a person. We're all people. It
Sure.
doesn't feel good to hear those sorts of things. But after that, after a little bit, you kind of realize that this is just another person on the internet, and maybe they're having a bad day, maybe they're not looking at things completely logical, and you should actually be in some ways understanding of them, and that's really where it always comes back to. So you learn that sort of tools, you get that sort of skill set, that tool set, I suppose you could say, with just being able to analyze problems from a distance, look at it logically, and not get caught up in your initial emotional response. That's the key thing, not getting caught up in that initial emotional response, which we're always going to feel. I always feel it, I guess I feel it a little bit less now, but I certainly still do have the feeling when I'm getting into potentially a trade's going against me, but I can step back and recognize it now. That's the whole difference, and that's what you learn from something like this, and you can apply it to just about anything in your life.
Well, most of what you said makes a lot of sense, other than what do you mean by a balanced diet is mostly meat? That's I've never heard that before.
Yeah, man. So, I've done a lot of work with my own diet. I've ate in some ways a mostly vegetarian diet. I've ate, a paleo diet, and then I started just eating mostly meat, actually, which for me seems to do the best, actually. Weirdly enough, it's one of those things you wouldn't have thought it. I would have never thought that I would turn into some sort of weird meat-eating carnivore, is what they're calling it, I suppose. But there is something to be said about that, man. I've certainly noticed that when you eat carbs, you go through, you actually become a little bit more emotional in a sense, or at least I've noticed that for myself. You don't.
I'm not sure that this is evidence-based.
Hey, try it out, man. Try it out.
Let me ask you this. You didn't once, in the midst of the meat eating, accidentally have a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar and get knocked out for a month, right? That's never happened to you, I hope.
I used to do that, man. I used to do that when I first started, but not at all, man. Not at all.
That's good. That's a good thing to hear. Well, listen, I hope that this has been very different for my audience. I hope people will have enjoyed the live stream, and we're going to archive this, and my interview with Eric Crown is going to be available on demand for you. Eric is a former professional equity option market trader. He has a YouTube channel where he live streams, which you should check out. He does market analysis, crypto stuff. Really appreciate you joining me, Eric. I mean, it's been different and informative. We agreed about some things, we disagreed about some things, and I think it's been really great.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It was a pleasure meeting you, David Pakman. You're a damn legend, and thanks for having me on, man. Really appreciate that. And to all the people out there, hey, if you want to come on over and check out the live streams, understand this is a very crass live stream. It's very fun at times too, of course, but mostly, it's mostly business, talking about Bitcoin, talking about general markets, analyzing the whole thing, and coming up with plans, and talking a lot about psychology as well. So if you enjoy those sorts of conversations, definitely feel free to come on in, and love to meet you.
Outbound question, recommend a couple books for our audience, please.
Oh, man. Okay.
Not necessarily related to what you do. Just like, I feel like people recommending books is often an interesting thing.
So I would say The first and foremost book that I think has changed my life, incredibly important, would definitely be The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Amazing,
Wow.
life-changing, and 100% translate directly into trading. I mean, that's basically that whole spiel that I kind of laid out earlier. That would be, directly gained from that book. Absolutely.
Okay.
The second book would be Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell, something Maxwell, Malcolm Maxwell, something like that. Another amazing book, more about just the way that you kind of view reality and you view yourself, and how that kind of changes your whole worldview. I thought that was extremely helpful as well. And then I suppose one that is a little bit more focused on trading, but it's the psychology of trading, not like trading strategies, but just the psychology of trading, which I thought was phenomenal. Was Trading in the Zone by Mark Douglas. Amazing book. Again, kind of goes back to those Eckhart Tolle concepts, I suppose you could say, and really, 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 really helped me, not just with trading, but also just understanding my own thought processes.
I've never read the second. I've never heard of the second two. I've read The Power
Oh,
of
wow.
Now by Eckhart Tolle, and he says some interesting things. But the more I read about him, he seems pretty kooky. But I don't know. But in any case, it's an interesting book. I've
Yeah.
read it. Yeah.
It's one of those things, man. You take from it what you want to take, and you can kind
Right.
of disregard the rest. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not
There's some
necessarily sure how
valuable
much I
things
believe
in
some
it,
of
but
it.
exactly, yeah.
Right.
All right, Eric Crown, thank you so much. We'll do it again, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, David. It's a pleasure being here.
All right, I'm going to keep streaming, so I will disconnect with you, Eric, but we'll follow up later. Thank you so much. And we've got, what else? So I'm still here for people who want to do other stuff. I'll stream for a little while longer. So I had this, let me see here. Let me pull up, how can I actually do this? Let me see. We had, okay, let me see. I had a thing up saying that if we got 10 new members, I would open up the phone lines. This could be, we might have 0. It could be really, really embarrassing. Okay, no, we actually do have a few. Okay, so Christy Silness is a new member, and Stephen Jimenez is a new member, and Sarah Bumpus is a new member. So let me, let's see. I need to figure out the right way to do this. Okay, so I can update the new member chat here. Members, where is this? Right. So we've got, I think I'm doing all this stuff in real time. Okay, we have 3 new website members. If we get 7 more, there's a discount code right there. I'll open up the phone lines and we can hear from people at 617-830-4750. For people asking me, am I no longer streaming on Twitch? I am streaming on Twitch. I am going to keep doing stuff at twitch.tv/David Pacman, and I will be doing stuff on YouTube as well. And I'm just going to alternate, and that's basically that. Let me deal with some of the super chats that are here. Matthew Dominguez, David, what's your favorite type of tacos? #Yangang. My favorite type of, it really depends on the mood. I mean, a good fish taco is great. How can you do better than a good fish taco? But I often just like a grilled chicken taco is good. If the chicken is properly grilled and nicely grilled is good. What do I know? Sarah B is a new YouTube member. Watcher is a new YouTube member. Regi254 Waco says, thank you, David, for all your hard work. I appreciate that. Angie978 says, it's all I've got. Thanks for your work. Appreciate that. Z Felds says, left, right, or center, I'm gay for TA. I have no idea what that means. Long live the corn. Ramon Rodriguez says, hi, David, love what you do. Siegfried Richter with a $20 super chat, the high super chat for the evening, which I appreciate. And Beth Houghton with a $5 super chat. And I already mentioned Sam Dean there. So I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, let me briefly take, I need to figure out the right, this is not actually the right streaming setup here. Let me take the super chats off the screen momentarily, just so I can do a couple of other things here off screen. Okay, what else did I have on my list here? Oh, okay. And Nicole Smith is also a new David Pakman Show member. So let me update that. We now have 4 of 10. If we get 10, the number is up there. If we get to 10 website members, I will open up the phone lines and people can call in if people want to talk to me. Let me see what's happening in the regular chat here. A lot of stuff about Andrew Yang, people talking about vegan diets and other stuff. Some people are leaving, some people are coming in, some people are happy now that the interview is over, some people are sad that the interview is over. Yeah, I mean, that was very different for sure. And hopefully it was relevant to people's interests, so to speak. Okay, so let me ask, are people generally interested in me taking phone calls, or is that not interesting? I know we're only 40% of the way there as far as the members go, but do people want to call in today, or do you want me to do other stuff? Because I do have other things I can do. And in fact, this Andy No thing I sort of wanted to talk about. Will I be alternating between Twitch and YouTube? Yeah, I mean, I will. Not one person not interested in phone calls, and about 20 people interested in phone calls. A lot of people interested in phone calls. People saying, David, play Minecraft. Yeah, I just don't know how. So it's not something I'd be able to do. So listen, let me briefly, so as you can see, this is the David Pakman Show subreddit, which if you are not a subscriber to, you really should be. Reddit, the URL is very long, but you could just go to davidpakman.com/Reddit. One of the things that I want to talk about maybe on tomorrow's program is about Andy No. Let's take a look at this article. Andy No is a guy who I had never heard of him before he was attacked at some rally by people ostensibly associated with Antifa, I guess. And immediately there were, I mean, of course, it's horrible that he was attacked, and I'm against violence, period. And that's it. I mean, it's just, you don't even need to say anything else. But there were sort of some weird things, like he was talking about how he was attacked with concrete, what looked like milkshakes, but they were concrete. And, you know, that could be, I guess, damaging or something. I don't know. And it seemed that there wasn't really evidence of that. And then he got a bunch of interviews and a bunch of media attention. He was on Joe Rogan. He was interviewed by Dave Rubin. And so I think he was even on Fox News. And then there started to be sort of some weird stuff. Like something seems weird. I mean, one thing which is kind of silly, but it's also odd, is that he talks with sort of a British accent. And then it was like, well, where did you get the British accent? And at one point he said that for some period of time, like his dad is British or part British or something. I don't even know, but it was sort of like, why do you talk with a British accent? Maybe there's something a little just off about this guy. Then, and I'm going from memory here, then it was reported, he reported that he witnessed Antifa people hitting someone with a hammer. But in reality, it was like the right-wingers who actually first introduced a hammer into a situation. And then when he was called out for having incorrectly reported that it was the left-wingers hammering people, he said, well, no, the people using the hammers were the right-wingers, but they were doing it in self-defense. So it was like, well, but you reported the opposite to begin with. It didn't really make sense. It was weird. And then now there has been an even bigger thing, which I'm trying to read about now, where he was witnessed with a far-right group planning violence, but never reported it, and now he has left Quillette. And, I mean, my view is that this guy is just the worst. I mean, nobody, I'm against violence, period. I'm just against violence. That's it. And when he was attacked, I denounced it, and I was against it, of course. But this guy really seems to be totally toxic. And if I have time tomorrow, I mean, like, this isn't the most important thing, but if I have time tomorrow, I absolutely am going to be talking about it. Okay, let me see here. We've got a couple of other super chats coming in. Lucy with a gun says, now into the presidency, would Ted Cruz be better? Better than Trump? Who knows? I don't know. It's so hard to say at this point because nothing happens in a vacuum. If we replace Trump now with Cruz, would we be better off? Or if Cruz had been the president from the beginning, I don't know. Justin Curon says, "Hi, David. Are you familiar with the work of Robert Evans? He put out a book about the history of white fascism called The War on Everyone. I'm familiar with him, but I am not familiar with that book." Matthew Dominguez, would you ever talk to the guys from Problem Solver Politics? They learn libertarian. They lean, I guess you mean libertarian, but are huge Yang supporters. I feel it'd be an interesting conversation. I don't know them. I'm open to it if I learn more about it. Stephen Robbins, who also I believe goes by the name Ronald Reagan on other programs I could not possibly name, is asking if we're doing calls. I don't know if we're doing calls, quite frankly, because we have, let me see here. We still have only 4 new website members, and I said if we get 10, I'll do calls. If you're new here, let me explain to you website membership. And maybe this will get us 6 more, and then maybe I will finally speak to Ronald Reagan, who has never successfully called into my show, as far as I know. Membership is the #1 funding source for my program. So it's like we've got YouTube revenue, and it goes up and down like a really bad-looking EKG. There's YouTube Super Chat, but YouTube takes 30% of that. There is Patreon, but Patreon takes like 5 to 9% of that. So membership, we control the entire process. We control our website. All we pay is 2.9% to the payment processing company, and we keep 97.1% of every payment, okay? I'll show you what the website looks like. It's really quick to do this. All you do is you go to my website, you pick a yearly or a monthly membership, you hit the sign up button. Then we have coupon codes available. If I type in the coupon code, for example, this is 2020, the $6 membership becomes just $3.60, okay? If I do a yearly membership and I hit sign up, the same coupon code works. I'll even give you a special secret coupon code. If you type half19, that's 50% off, $30 for the entire year. We do, 10 to 12 hours a week of programming between the broadcast show and live streams and live calls and all of this different stuff. It's really cheap. We keep 97.1% of every payment, and that's why we talk about membership, okay? So right now, we've had 4 people sign up during this stream, which is quite frankly a pretty poor showing, I'm not gonna lie. But if we get 6 more people who sign up, it takes under a minute. I'll open up the phone lines, and then maybe I will finally get to speak to Stephen Robbins. So let's see if we can make that happen. Okay, a few other super chats here. Dr. Galaskowitz with a $1.99 super chat. I appreciate that. Challah Sheen, nothing more delicious than a good raisin challah, that's for sure. Challah Sheen says, can you get a UFO researcher on the show? Maybe. I don't know how interesting that is to me, quite frankly. And I don't know how interesting it would be to my audience, but I'd consider that. Mike, this is like Joe Biden, 303-30330. Mike 1013-1994. Maybe that's just October 13th, 1994. Sends a $25 super chat saying, debate Sam Cedar. Oh, wait. Right, yeah, I'm not the person you're supposed to be sending that to. Stephen Robbins, also known as Ronald Reagan on other programs, is a new YouTube member. Just for kicks, okay? Even though the target is 10 website members, because Ronald Reagan is one of them, I'm going to count that. And we are going to up that to 5. So if just 5 more people sign up on my website, you can see what that looks like over here. How do I become a member? JoinPacman.com. JoinPacman.com. Very easy. JoinPacman.com takes you to this page, and then you can sign up. C. Mills 5. How do you feel about the coverage of the Amazon burning down compared to the Notre Dame Cathedral coverage? Seems off scale to me personally. Of course. I mean, listen, there's a couple factors at play. There's the factor at play of events with a discrete beginning, middle, and end are just much more media friendly. So the Amazon burning is part of a much bigger story. And so you're just completely right. The coverage is ridiculous. The G7 saying we're going to commit 20 million to dealing with that. As has been pointed out on Twitter, there are video games with far larger budgets than what is being committed by 7 countries to fight the fires and it's absolutely, the media coverage is ridiculous. The reactions are ridiculous. It's all completely ridiculous. Okay, let me say thank you to. Okay, we actually have a bunch of things. We have got a bunch of new members here. Let's see. Justin Coron is a new member. That's number 6. Spencer Nair is a new member. That's number 7. And Salvador Urbalejo is a new member. That's number 8. Dusty Jones is a new member. That's number 9. Okay, so now we're actually making some progress here. We are just one new member away from me opening up the phone line. So feel free to be number 10. The Progressive Voice, I knew that at some point he was, actually think, Sahil, have you been doing stuff on my Twitch streams, but I just don't notice? Is that something that's been going on? Because somebody told me that you've been in my Twitch streams. I haven't noticed you. Thoughts on dry jacking? What about Andrew Luck retiring? Also, do you think Kid Boo is the strongest form of boo? I have no opinion about any of that stuff other than Andrew Luck retiring. I completely listen. I think football is on a downward spiral. I think football is in a death spiral. Andrew Luck retiring. Gronkowski talking today about or yesterday about just like the psychological state that he was in as a result of football. I think football is in a death spiral for a number of different reasons. Joseph Anderson also signing up with a YouTube membership. And I think that we are almost there as far as new members go. Dusty Jones. Oh, no, I mentioned Dusty Jones already. Wait a second. Austin Heller and Jimmy Barrios are new David Pakman Show members. All right, that gets us to 11. Keep them coming, by all means. Let's open up the phone lines here. Let me see if I can just get things. Let me get set up here for live calls. Let me think about the right way to do it. Okay, so we're going to go to this, and then let me get the phone line system set up. The number is 617-830-4750. Just give me a moment to enable the phone lines. Okay, you can start calling in 617-830-4750. By the way, if Ronald Reagan wants to tell me what his area code is, I'm glad to go to him first. I normally don't do this, but I realize that he's been trying to get on the phone with me for I think months at this point. So if someone wants to tell me, if he wants to tell me what his area code is, I'm glad to go to the phones and get to Steven first. Let me see here. I'm just getting connected. We will very soon hear. What is the number to? 617-830-4750. Let's see. 509.
Thank
Okay.
you for calling into the David Pakman Show. Please do not use speakerphone.
Let me get set up
Have
here.
your question ready and listen for David to call out your area code.
All right. Let me just get my notes set up here. I always take a bunch of different notes so I know who is calling. Okay, all right, let me go right to him. Let me go to our caller from the 509, who I believe is potentially Stephen Robbins, a.k.a. Ronald Reagan.
Hey, David. How you
Yes, it's a pleasure to hear your voice.
doing? Hey, likewise. I wanted to say there's some drama about your studio set, and a lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people say I might have had something to do with it. And the whole joke, the real joke behind the joke is that you do it better than Sam, which I think is why he, wouldn't really.
I do. Hold on. I do what better than Sam? I do what better than Sam?
The set.
You
took his set and you made it better. And so Sam realizes that he kind of got owned in that respect, and that's good on you and bad on him.
Right.
And frankly, for him, that's embarrassing. But
you think that that's what it is?
That's neither here. Oh, most definitely. He's got like a little sticker on his window.
Right.
And you've got the whole monitor, and you can do graphics and things like that. So
sure.
I do want to say that I actually I like to do a lot of jokes, and I have sort of a dry sense of humor. But I'm going to be serious. and say, I really like your show. And it's been sort of auto-populating now into my YouTube. When I go to YouTube, there's the segments that you do.
Sure.
And I'm going to support your show. I think that you're great, and keep up the good work.
Wow. I mean, if you are, I don't know if this is your dry humor or if you're being serious, but if you're being serious, I really appreciate that.
No, I'm being for real. Totally sincere, and I'm sorry for the joshing. I hope you know that it was all in good fun.
Of course.
It was never meant to be mean-spirited. So.
And listen, I heard that you speak. Is it true
Yeah.
that you speak Spanish fluently?
Yeah, so I actually first heard, yes, it's true. I'm a former Mormon, and I did my Mormon mission in the Canary Islands, where I met a lot of Argentinians, Argentines.
Sure.
And that's where I first heard this rumor from Argentines that Hitler died in Argentina. What do you think about that?
I don't believe that. I think we have the official story on Hitler. I think there are certainly lots of other Nazis who died in Argentina.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Well, all right. But yeah, it's true that I speak Spanish, and somebody on the Majority Report the other day suggested a Spanish-speaking sort of progressive left-wing show. First of all, do you know of any content creators out there already doing something like that? And
no, I'm interested in finding some. I know of some lunatic right-wing Spanish-speaking political shows, but I actually am not aware of any good leftist ones.
Well,
yeah.
You and I, let's put our brains together and see what we can come up with.
Let's do it. All right, Steven/Ronald, really appreciate the call.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Very good. Well, so no, the good news is that we've got him now in our caller ID system, and then that'll all be good. Michael Blasius says, I called from 617. What happened? I don't know. I've taken one call so far. That's all. Nothing's happened yet. All right. Let's go to our caller from the 516 area code. Who's calling from 516 today? 516, do you have us muted? 516, last opportunity. All right, 516 is gone. Let's go to the 415 area code. Who's calling today from 415?
Hey, David. Can you hear me?
Yeah, who's this?
Hey, it's Dino Ortega. I'm from San Francisco, California.
Hey, Dino.
So I'm only 17 years old, and I've only been really into politics for probably about 3 years now.
Okay.
And I've noticed that so many of the right's positions and fundamental philosophies or fundamental policy positions are based on just factual inaccuracy and things that are just not true. I'll talk to my friends or to my dad or to other right-wing people I know who or support Trump or support whoever, and so many things they believe just aren't true. And I
like what? Give me an example.
Well, sorry, I have a little bit of a cold here.
Oh no.
Well, they'll say that a vast majority or a vast percentage of Latin American immigrants commit violent crime, or that
Okay, and he's gone. Very good. I don't know if he hung up because he didn't have another example or we lost connection. I don't know what that was about. The number for people asking is 617-830-4750. Let's go. This will be special. Let's go to country code 52. Who's calling today from country code 52?
Hello?
Yes, that's you. What is country code 52?
Hello, David. My name is Santiago, and I'm from Mexico City.
Oh, brilliant. What's going on, Santiago?
Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous.
That's okay. That's good. That works in my advantage.
Firstly, I would like to congratulate you on having your show.
Thank you.
I've been following your show since 2016, and you and Todd Kalinsky have informed me about U.S. politics, and that's why I now support Bernie Sanders, even though I'm a Mexican citizen. And yeah, I would like to ask you a question regarding Trump. I saw your video about the censorship that that leaked executive order was sent to the media. And my biggest fear is that, for example, we have a new president, which is AMLO, and he has had several authoritarian decisions. And my question is, do you think that authoritarian decision or those authoritarian decisions that Trump has made could trickle down to Mexico, to Latin America, and especially, for example, in Argentina with Kirchner probably returning to power?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know if it's a trickle down per se. I think it's part of the broader nationalist authoritarian movements that we've seen, particularly in Europe, and there could be contagion in Latin America as well. I don't know that it's so direct. And in Latin America, it tends to be more sort of pseudo-left populist authoritarianism. It's like a different flavor than the right-wing nationalist stuff that we see. So yeah, I mean, to some extent, but I don't know that it's sort of like that it's going to translate quite so literally.
Oh, okay. Well, in Mexico, we have a say that what happens in America occurs in Mexico a couple of years later. So that's kind of a casual thing we say.
It certainly seems to be happening with obesity, interestingly enough.
Yeah, that has happened. And yeah, David, thank you very much for your time. And
okay.
Deseo lo mejor.
Muchas gracias. Okay, Santiago, great to hear from him from Mexico City. We're taking calls at 617-830-4750. Let's go to our caller from the 630 area code. Who's calling from 630 today?
Hey, is this me?
Yeah, that's you.
Oh, hey, David. This is Adam.
Hey, Adam. Where are you calling from?
I'm from the Chicago suburbs.
Brilliant. What's going on?
I had a couple questions for you. I think I know you answered the first one. I mean, whether it would be a centrist candidate or a progressive candidate would be the best option for beating Trump next year. And the second one, I was wondering if you yourself would ever consider running for political office anytime, maybe in the near or in the distant future.
I've been approached about running. I don't even want to say for what, because that just even saying, there's just no reason to say for what. It's irrelevant because I'm not doing it.
Right.
But I mean, listen, if I were to do it, I would have to figure out, first of all, could I do it? Could I do more good if I were to win than what I can do on the show? And the show has a sizable audience now, and to bail on that would be, a big decision. And I would need to, I mean, listen, the truth is that what keeps me from really taking it seriously is the amount of oversight that there would be over what I'm doing as an elected official. And, I run my business, I do what I want, I say what I want, and it doesn't mean there are no repercussions. Obviously there are, but there's not oversight in that same way. And so I don't know.
It'd be a big loss of freedom for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. No question about it.
Yeah.
And, there's people in the chat saying I could do both, but it's like, not really. If you're a full-time, I wouldn't be running for city council that's part-time, right? I mean, I'd be doing it and it would be a serious position. And I would want to make sure that I could use my audience to propel me in a sense. And I would want to use the audience I've built to help me get to that office if I were to do it. And so there would need to be a lot of it. I would literally need to do an actual exploratory committee to look at all aspects of it.
Right. Okay. But it's something you wouldn't necessarily rule it out, but it's not something that you consider in the near future then probably.
Would never rule anything out. That would be very silly to rule it out. Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it. Really enjoyed it.
Okay, Adam from Chicago. Great to hear from you. Appreciate that. Let's go next to our caller from the 908 area code. Who's calling today from 908? By the way, the phone's working beautifully today.
Hey, David. This is Mike. How's it going?
Hey, Mike. What's going on?
Hey. So I'm curious about your thoughts on the national debt and what implications that has for our country.
Can you be a little more specific? Do you mean like just the implications of just having debt?
Is there going to be a reckoning for all this debt, and do you think it's a negative thing? Do you think it's a problem if we go further into debt, which we obviously are?
Yeah. So there's not a simple answer to this. I mean, here's the thing. First of all, in terms of dollars, we could be further and further in debt, but as a percentage of the economy, it could remain the same. If the economy keeps growing, the national debt could keep growing in dollars, but not represent a bigger and bigger part of the economy. Does that part at least make sense?
That does make sense, sure.
Good. So just like as a starting point, the number of dollars of debt doesn't tell us whether we're in trouble or not. The second thing is when we talk about deficit spending, not every dollar of deficit spending is created equal. So we could imagine reasons in the same way that a household can go into debt for a mortgage versus go into debt to pay for a vacation. Those would not be equally advantageous financially. A country can deficit spend for good reasons or bad reasons. Would you sort of grant that at least?
Yes, there's consumption and then there's investment.
Sure. And even beyond that, there's stimulative investment and not stimulative investment. So my view on the debt is I don't have a problem with carrying debt. The idea that at some point we're going to need to pay it all off is not very likely, and that nightmare scenario doesn't seem to be likely. I'm okay deficit spending for things that would be stimulative to the economy, getting everybody health care, even though I don't think we actually need to. I think a lot of the proposals pay for themselves, but ignoring that for a second, I don't think it makes sense to deficit spend to give really rich people tax cuts, which they'll mostly put in the bank, for example. So I don't have just a view which is like the debt is good or the debt is bad.
Well, if you give private individuals money, won't they, like if you say rich people, I'm not really for giving bigger tax cuts, but when they invest the money in the economy anyway, so that would just be another form of adding investment, albeit private?
Yes, but the point is that depending on who you give the money to, they do different things with it because of a concept called the marginal propensity to consume. And just stuffing the money away in a bank account does not have the same stimulative effect as, for example, investing in a local business, as an example, or spending it in your local community. So you still, even in that case, you have to distinguish between who gets the money.
Well, it is being invested if it goes in a bank, right? Because it's being lent out to other people, either for consumption or for their business endeavors, maybe a small business.
It is. That's the primary way in which money on paper or in a computer is created. But the stimulative effect of that has been studied versus other types of spending or investment, and it's not nearly as advantageous.
I'll concede that I don't know enough to refute you on that.
All right. Very good. Appreciate the phone call. Thank you so much.
I'd really like to see you debate Gavin. I'd do it on your show. I would like.
Sorry,
to see
Gavin who?
Gavin McInnes.
Oh, Gavin McInnes. Okay, gotcha. Okay, all right. I will consider that. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, take care. Let me read a couple of other super chats that came in. Matthew Dominguez wants to know if I will break down Andrew Yang's climate policy. I plan to. Alice Engelhart is a new YouTube member. Tico Todd sent me 2,500 Costa Rican something. Let's look up what that is in US dollars. CRC to USD. Costa Rican colones is, $4.40. Okay, wow, there's been some currency devaluation there, it seems. Actually, no. In fact, the Costa Rican colon seems to have gained value over the last 6 months. In any case, I appreciate that. E sends a $5 super chat. Thoughts on polling that Warren supporters are mostly college-educated upper middle class and Bernie is supported widespread lower middle class base. I have that bookmarked. I have not looked at it in detail yet. Let me thank a couple of other new members. Rafael Calderon, Matt Dominguez, Paloma Renee, and I believe I already thanked Jimmy Barrios and Austin Heller. Really appreciate it. Okay, glad I was able to get the phone lines opened. I'm out of time, but I do plan on streaming again later this week on Twitch, okay? The next stream this week is on Twitch, twitch.tv/David Pakman. Twitch.tv/David Pakman. Subscribe there with Amazon Prime via Twitch Prime. I'll be streaming there next time, and it's going to be a big party. I hope to see you there.